Test 1, 2.
Yeah.
Sound good to me.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, let's get this ball on and roll. And y'all know what time it is. It is Krampus 2024, and I am joined with the magnificent soundscape engineer of the fucking world, Rillo. What's up, bro?
What up, dude? I wouldn't say the world, but definitely of my mind.
Well, that's how I feel, because every time I watch you or see your videos, there's always some new instrument or something new that you're dabbling with, and it baffles me. Like, what instrument is that you're playing right now?
Yeah, gotta keep it new, gotta keep it weird. But that's the motto anyway.
So how did your set go last night?
It was good. It was long, just how I like it. So, the vibe was interesting, but it was a good, like, trying to follow that, but also, like, kind of create, like, the art, if you will, in between everything. So, overall, I liked it. It was fun. It's like you get caught in the chase, but of, like, trying to please, but still, like, trying to, like, actually make what your sound is or something like that. So,
all right. Sounds like it was a good time, though.
yeah.
So what have you been up to? I know it's been a while since we've had you on the show. It's been, 2 years now? It's been a minute.
Just about. I know we missed each other at Void, but yeah. It's been interesting. I just redid my studio, so that's been taking up a lot of time. But also I've been, like, in a hot rod, like, building a car, or a truck, technically. So,
what kind of vehicle are you building? Are you building it from scratch, or, like, it's an old restoration project?
Resto mod, if you will. But it's a 1929 Model A. Ford, and the truck of that model. But yeah, I've had it for many years, and just got started again this past year on, like, completely gutting it from the frame up, doing custom framework, all the welding and fab on it. And
damn, I didn't know you knew how to do all that. That's cool.
yeah, it's a lot of old skills that I'm, like, tapping back into.
Yeah.
But it's fun to, like, be in that setting again. Definitely a lot more lessons have been learned since then, so it's applying those lessons to, like, an old skill has been pretty interesting. So,
are you still living in Texas too?
Yeah.
In Houston?
Yep.
Cool. And that's where your studio's at too?
Yeah. So I've converted my studio. I've converted the master bedroom of the house into the studio.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so that's where I spend the most time. I can sleep for hopefully 8 hours in the small room.
Oh, all right. So when you talk about building the studio in your master bedroom, what did you do, like, with the walls and ceiling? Because, we put up these sound panels, but I know there's stuff that you can put on the walls that help with sound, rock something.
Mm-hmm. So there's, like, a rock wool panel, if my mouth will work correctly, that you can make them pretty more affordable. They're still pretty expensive, considering. But I found just a cheaper, because I'm trying to, like, completely redo my studio. So I just got a standing desk and with rack mounts and all that kind of stuff. So I just bought some cheaper foam, more absorbative material that's a higher density. These are good. If I'm not mistaken, there might be like or Uralex or something similar. But the bigger on the walls, like to my understanding, the bigger changes of all that, you'll get that kind of dispersed in like a mastering studio type sense. So, standing in the middle of the room, getting all the treatment, and kind of figuring out what the room is giving you. Also, like getting speakers set and placed in the correct spot, all that. It's not just like a room to make noise. It's a very like tuned. I'm trying to achieve this sound. That way, it's replicatable every time you sit down and make a track. You know what it's going to sound like. So.
And would that help with your live streams too?
Yeah. I mean, like Dead Mouse, I haven't watched him very much, but he does a similar kind of like, this is the studio overlook type deal. Live stream right now really isn't the focus. Right now, as far as like content and everything goes, my studio sessions are generally set aside like 15 minutes for content, and that's just to like really make sure the art and like me and the meditation of it can still like flow through that. It's not a content session, it's a music session.
Oh, all right.
Because I can get very like channeled into like I have to make this for the content, versus like this is the session that this is. So I try to keep them separate, in that way like anything I'm trying to dig into, it will flow, instead of like I'm trying to perfect this for 30 seconds, a 30-second clip.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of magic in getting that 30-second or a minute and a half, whatever. And that's very tough to do, to like get a full, like perfect product from that. But it also needs to happen to like stay relevant.
Yeah, keep you out there.
Yeah.
Is that hard for you, doing that, producing your music and then producing content for the different social media platforms?
So I'm like the most horrible person for social media. I try to keep it separate. There are times that I'm like, I just need like time away from it. This is kind of getting too much for me personally. But also that it generally falls into line of like, I have this bigger project going on right now. I don't need to be on. I'll make promotions, things like that, do my responsibility, but there's no like, I'm going to devote these many hours or this many minutes in a day to that right now. But when it comes up and like I'm in the flow of a studio session and it sounds good, cool. We'll like set the timer for 15 minutes, record that. It could be for 30 seconds, however, and then keep that kind of flow going on from there. So.
All right. I feel that. That shit's tough. Especially at an older age, too. Everybody loves them shorts now. I was telling Evans about that. That's where everybody wants to watch them little.
Oh, yeah.
Because we were talking about, like, Facebook and Instagram, it's a minute and a half. Then TikTok is, you can go as long as you want. I think it's like 6 or 10 minutes. I'm not for sure. I make the videos and shout out China. She runs the TikTok.
Yeah.
She a lot younger than, we're like 7 years apart, but she's from a different generation.
Yeah.
Where
I don't even have TikTok.
She's like, you need to do this TikTok to help y'all, or do this.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and you ain't seen that? I was like, no, I ain't seen that yet.
Yeah.
But what have you, musically wise, Where have you performed recently besides at Krampus last night?
Krampus. The time before that was Void. I did a mom's Halloween. After Void. That was about it. I've been kind of like just chill in performing right now. Just kind of focused on bigger projects at the house, making sure what I have set up is like a good foundation to keep like new production and music up. So that's kind of been the focus this past year, is just like a restructure from the base, and then can continue with like a higher level of like music production and sound engineering and all that creative fun stuff.
Oh yeah, it's definitely a wormhole for sure.
Yeah.
Once you think you got something figured out, there's something else out there, and you're like, "Ooh, I want that bad now too."
Yeah, and that's when you start to like blend in my world anyway. You'll blend the analog and digital, and like I've been completely shunning digital for 4 years now, roughly, let's say. As far as like using Ableton with my modular and everything else, I wanted them separate, but like now mixing the two together and like recording and manipulating and using the plugins with all this like super powerful raw analog gear is like, that's where I'll spend hours at a night right now.
How do you convert the audio from the audio to the digital RAM? How do you mix them to get analog to the digital RAM? How do you mix those two together?
So there's like 20 different cats you can skin, but basically you're using a digital interface, analog to digital interface. In my configuration, I have what's called a DB25 output. So it's like a big serial jack, like old school VGA type. And that carries 8 channels, I would say. So I have 16 outputs total from my modular that I can go into an interface with, and then that's recorded into Ableton, or generally how I do it. And then like you can set like aux effects in, essentially, to where like Ableton is only listening, it's not recording, or it's doing both. And then you can run an effect off of each of those channels. So like I might be sending tons of reverb and delays and like all this like super technical modular effect chain into Ableton, and then like I have a plugin called Portal, which is literally like, it's a granular reshaper really, but it portals, it transports things, like it you can record just moving that around, and it and have that underlying on something that I could never, the hardware could never like create, or it would take hundreds of thousands of dollars to do it. and like a whole room. So, blending those two together, like having the modular breathe and do its thing is like still something to respect and work with. But kind of where I land in terms of like the music that I like try to put out and the sound that I'm trying to have lies in the more digital sound. So being able to like combine those two and really like kind of land in a center is been the challenge. So because I can sit on modular for hours, but not everybody loves that.
Got to appease the crowd, I guess, sometimes. So, is there any new interesting instruments that you've run across? Because I remember last time we talked about the didgeridoo.
The didgeridoo?
Yeah.
I have it. It's safe and It's been 2 years, yeah.
Yeah, since we sat down. I'm pretty sure.
What about tabla?
What's a tabla?
So I've been studying tabla for about 2 years now. Tabla is a set of Indian drums, a buy-in and a die-in. But it's like the white with the black spot Indian drums. They're pretty
okay.
popular. So yeah, that's like a whole thing. You don't just play them. You have to learn them. You study them, and you'll never learn them. But you get a teacher or a guru or however your belief is, and everything is passed down orally or written now. But I was taught to learn Devanagari Sanskrit, so like it's for tabla, so I can't read like Hindu or write, but like I can understand somewhat. Learning to understand, like consonants, and like this is where we start the script, because this is like the overall flow of what we're trying to do. Speak it, din na, din na. That's all Devanagari. So yeah, he taught me, you speak it, you spell it, you write it, you play it, you say it, and it's all just a kind of flow that you have to do. And then that's when the speed comes and all the flashy, like these guys are moving their hands so fast that it's just like a blur. Like
You just play with your fingertips?
yeah, well, it's combination. So each dins and das and tin na, that's a different stroke, if you will. So da is your left hand, an open stroke, and then in your right hand is going to be na. So it's like ding. That's the high sound.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's a very harmonic drum, the buy-in. And so you have the tonic, that's like what everything is tuned to, and then you have a harmonic, that's the dong. So it'll be like a third off. So you're muting the harmonic at all times and only playing the tonic.
Oh, okay.
And then muted, ding ding, ding ding. And then you can go the third down. Ding, ding, ding. And so that's like kind of what is going on with only the right hand. And then your left hand is all mixed in. So terekita is a mix of like right and left hand.
Oh, okay.
So it's all kind of like audible da din din da da din din da da din din da da din din da. That's a 16 count cycle, and that I was telling you what stroke is being played. So like da is one stroke, din din da is two more strokes. But then that also communicates with like who you're accompanying with, and there's some tabla is very big on improvisation. So it's a super big improv, like on the higher level. Like right now, I'm basically being taught, the structure of why everything is done, all the history of like, this is how things have been repeated or, passed down from generations. And so like all the ustads and pandits and everything else, they're like kind of above everybody, just like improvising on like everything that they've been taught for like their whole life, basically. So, and then they're continuing to teach it down, and it just keeps flowing down. That's how like all Indian classical music is being like taught, essentially.
So how how did you get down the path to learn how to play all these different instruments? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I picked up sitar, you know.
Is it you go out to just try to find a new interesting sound for your, your sets and your recordings, or is it just happenstance, like you just stumble across this?
Yeah, it kind of morphs. So 2-3 years ago, I was like really big into like the drum circle scene in Houston. That's when it was like super like pretty alive and popping. So every Wednesday night, you know, you bring your little collection out and drum. You know, it was a kind of an open gathering space, open jam, but could only be drums.
All percussion.
Yeah, and so you know, there was that big collaboration of like different influences of like cultures, and Houston is just as big of a melting pot as New Orleans culturally, maybe not historically, but like a lot of, you know, Latin influences and everything else, mainly. And so like being able to like be in between, you know, I have a lot of roots in Louisiana and very well connected with people that I know in New Orleans. I'm blessed to be in New Orleans quite often, but you know, it's a completely different sound. It's a different beat. My mentor in New Orleans, you know, he was teaching the uptown beats, and you know, that's downtown, that's uptown. So bringing that back to a drum circle in Houston, which is very Latin based, and you know, they expand upon that, African and some Cuban. You know, bringing that kind of New Orleans feel into that circle, you know, morphs the whole night into something different that everybody else can communicate and flow on. And then, you know, we go back when we try, you know, take that Latin influence to New Orleans, which is already musically 10 times the melting pot that Houston is. And so it's just a good like transferring of like, this is piquing an interest, and then that for me transforms into this sound is missing in this community. And I was in Houston, so like there was no real Indian influence, and to me, like the understanding or the learning of the understanding of Indian, just all pretty much blanket Indian classical music will unlock maybe not the technique and the sounds and like the little things in other percussion, but it'll unlock rhythm a whole lot more systematically than, I mean, there's some African teachings that are very systematical as well, but for me, having that sound carry out in a drum circle, or you know, the open jam, or you know, just the kind of feel that brings in historically has been pretty popular. But that was kind of where, like, having that understanding of the rhythm and being able to apply it to the other sounds, that's where I land now, so luckily.
Yeah, a good old melting pot on both sides.
Yeah.
And it's cool that you're able to take from both sides and make something great out of it. And unique and great sound.
This is all live too, you know, it's not really in like my production. I mean, I would say it comes out in like my overall grooves in productions, but I don't put music out right now. That's not my focus. But soon it will be. I have, you know, collaborations and stuff like that, but I have a couple tracks that I've worked on, but right now it's just been, you know, building the studio out, making sure all that kind of base level, like good engineering, as best as I can, with the budget that I have, you know, is there. And, you know, I have the community to reach out to. I have some really good engineer friends that, like, hey, you need to do it this way. Like, don't do what you're doing.
Give you the honest truth.
Yeah. So the honest truth, and it ends up costing a little bit more, but in the long term, I feel it's the master bedroom of my house. This is like where I'm going to be spending the most time, other than the living room. But this is like a big portion of my life. Let's like make sure I walk in, I want to be able to like flow and just create. I have the idea, it's there. I don't have to dig for it. Everything needs to be laid out. You come in, you press the record button, and then you start your modular session, or you start your sound design session, or however. It's a completely like autonomous. That like right now I have deck set up on one side, my computer, and then the other wall is the modular. So it's I can get into a groove, record, or just wake up and spin, for 20, 30 minutes before the workday or anything like that. And then it's just a very good flow right now. But to me, a studio is always going to transform. Like once you have the base shell, like this is what it takes for the room to sound good. I can guarantee you my modular will never stay on the wall that it's on. Hopefully the computer stays where it's at. It's a pretty big base of like how the room is designed. But just the ability to, like, I have all my Indian instruments. I call it the Indian corner. That's kind of like the meditation area. I have my pillows, and it's a practice area for my tabla. All my Indian instruments are lined up there, so it's all sitting on the ground. So just grab one, kind of go through that. It's to me, if you're trying to, especially if you're trying to learn something, but having it out and ready, like if it's out in front of you, you're gonna pick up the coffee and drink it. You're gonna, it's there, like ready to be
Used and not have to think about it.
Yeah,
That makes a lot of sense, because you don't want to. You're going back to the basics, getting it right. So whenever you want to do music at any given time, you have everything right there available and sounds good.
yeah,
And you don't have to worry about nothing. That makes a lot of sense.
yeah. And like when you're in that moment, and like that's the magic of it. Like adding, like taking away from that, getting out of that space to add this other sound or this other idea, or stopping. For me, it's usually like stopping the recording or stopping the flow of it to like, I need to dig this right now, like in a modular session. Like I need to like, I want this to control what the filter is doing, or whatever action I'm trying to get to. So I have to stop everything, which like takes me out of the space that I was in, hunt it down, and like really like get it into the right space that I'm trying to like narrow it down into, or anything like that. And then like going back into like starting it up again and doing everything else. It takes a little bit. So if it's always like there and ready, like all I need to do is plug this in, all I need to do is add this bass. It's already plumbed in. I don't have to unmute, or I might just have to like unmute one thing,
Yeah.
That's like the goal right now. Like everything is loomed out nice. It's not just like cables strewn. Like the modular has like its own power and like outputs all like in a big loom out to the desk, and it
sounds nice.
Yeah, trying to make it nice. That's been
Been the goal.
Yeah, all hand done, custom made. Like this is the cable run. These are the cables in the run. And going from there. So
Fuck yeah.
Doesn't seem like it's that much, but like,
Well, I can imagine.
saying it is like, man, this is actually getting a lot.
Yeah, just thinking about recording equipment's expensive, and doing a whole studio, I bet you it was not cheap. For sure.
I've had the gear for most a good while now, luckily. So it's more of like a renovation, if you will. So gutting out, I got a new rug, and which I was on hardwood, like flooring. So just the rug alone, like, was tremendous. And then all the treatment on the walls. I did an overhead patch kind of where I sit. The overhead is by far like not done at all. I want to do the rock wool, like clouds, they call them. A buddy of mine, very analytical. He's concerned about the weight. He's also a carpenter, so he's concerned about the weight from doing it. But there's some other ways to kind of have lighter panels that'll still give you the sculpting that you need from the ceiling. That's where I find my room right now is kind of reflective and lacking. But it's good. It's where it sits right now is a good shape to be in, as far as like the sound and like how the room sits. You walk in, it's a very like calm room. There's not a bunch of like reverberations, and like I've tried to make the aesthetics look very like homey and calm. I spend a lot of time meditating, doing the tablas and practicing and everything else in there on top of the production and the sessions and everything else. So I set up bowls when I have the time right now, but I'll have my bowls set up on the other wall. And so it's like in those sessions, the room really does become a giant, like just cone of sound. So I've come to find, which is very interesting.
So with the bowls, do you fill those with water at a certain level, or is
No.
it don't have water at all?
That's a tuned quartz. So that's where like your higher level of like pricing is going to fall into, of like the quality of the quartz, and if it's different than regular quartz and all that. But each bowl set that you buy has to be within a certain tolerance of tuning. So like the bigger the bowl, the deeper the sound.
Yeah.
The smaller bowl, the higher the sound. Also the thickness, like the quality. It's really the quality that you're buying when like you're spending the price. But my bowls were relatively inexpensive on the lower side, and they, with the modular, I can tune to them, but that's kind of the beauty with Indian instruments as well. It's super loose tuning, but they run pretty true. And then another buddy of mine who's a mentor, if you will, he likes to run similar sizes. So they'll both be C's, but they're made at different times, different people. And they'll run just out of phase from one another. So it'll be essentially like a binaural kind of effect. He calls it the Doppler effect.
Doppler.
But that's what it is, like an old school kind of Leslie speaker. But it's actually the tuning that is doing that to your ears, just like naturally, and like where everything kind of bounces. So like you played trombone, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you were tuning concert A or C or whatever. You could slide it out, or, your tuning slide, or your slide, and like listen to the waves, right? That's what, so that's the difference. So once you like start to like really, once you like start to really slow it down and get into that tuning, it'll line up. You don't hear any more waves. So the smaller, that's where I work in now, the smaller degree off that tuning that you get, the slower the wave is. So like the sound bath for Void was all just slightly detuned sine waves. That was the whole bottom end structure, was just setting tempo with unaudible
Yeah.
and that's just too detuned, like just running them slightly detuned
just-
off. Yeah.
Huh.
Just a little slide, that's all that would be.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, and so that's gonna set, like, for me, like that's the kind of binauralness of it. It's not a true, like, I do music like that and recordings like that, but it's not a true, but from left to right. But it's a binaural in the sense of like waving and a sinusoidal like pattern, essentially. So yeah, I've been using tuning like that, even in like super high end speeds, like techno, modular techno, stuff like that, 140, 150, which that's usually pretty fast for techno, or right at it. But we're operating in 10 and 15 in Sound Bath, or Fairyland, free float. So, but using the techniques in between each other, that's kind of been interesting, because like the modular is such a heavy budget, or heavy on the budget. Doing multiple things with it is, for me, is very important. So I can use it in a production session. I can use it in, sound design, purely sound design. I can use it as its own system. I can change the system that it does. I have built it out to be a very versatile, like, I can run all effects, hardware effects, just with the modular for what I'm doing in Ableton.
Yeah.
It's all just like the flow of bouncing back and forth right now has been very interesting. But it's like I record sessions. I don't record like this. I'm going to sit down. I have a couple of projects like that right now, but right now has just been like you go back in and you can cherry pick. Like, this is a good moment, but this isn't. I'm not focusing on like the sound that I'm trying to put out. I'm focusing on like figuring it out, making like the art of like, this is the music that I'm making right now. Because for me, sitting behind Ableton or in front of Ableton, I have a very specific, like, I want this sound, and then I can't figure it out, or it takes longer than 15 minutes to try to figure it out, and then the process is gone. The original idea isn't there, to where on the modular I can like peck out a sequence. It's giving me kind of a rough thing of what I put into it, but I can also follow it and like make that into things. So that's like a completely different way of like continuing, like, this is what it's giving me, and so I'm just going to take it and like manipulate that, instead of sit back in Ableton and be like, I want this specific sound, how do I make it, and like end up not making it,
Yeah. Get bogged down in the details.
Yep. So, I mean, there's a lot more details to do it, but I find in my process now that like recording that and then putting it into like a post-production type mindset, like this, you've recorded the band, for instance. This is the mindset I've been trying to put myself in. I'm recording the band right now. I have all the modular, all the other whatever I have going on. I need to separate what's happening now into like, this is where all the levels need to be, the mixing, the mastering, everything else. Like, there's a definite process. This is what I've been told. This is what I've heard. But lining in and figuring out that process has been like the way to move more efficiently. And like right now, I'm sitting down to do sound design only. I don't care what the goal is for. I don't care what comes out of it. I'm just going to make weird noises right now for however long I want, and I'm going to record it. And so like I'll do that for a night, and that's a session. And then I'll take my 15 minutes, going around with Instagram or something. And then the next night will be 150 techno, just like deep diving, moving cables, figuring out what stuff does. And then the next night we'll want to do 150 techno because that was badass last night, and it turns into a 10 BPM or sub BPM free flow, and we're full ambient, no drums, no attack, no nothing. Just because that's where the night went, and being able to follow that. That's kind of where the magic has been with modular, luckily. So
I like how you're able to take a look at your music and at yourself to be like, to bring yourself to this level you are now, to get back to the base and go like, this is what I want to do. I'm going to make it right. And I don't care what comes from it. I'm doing it because it makes me happy, and I want to do it right too.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and I'm kind of blessed to be able to do it right, or be able to do it right. But I feel like being able to just kind of reach back into like all the past skills that I've acquired now, if you will, and applying that in musically into a studio space, and having it like, I want to sit down and record a Sabar drum like that. I have very minimal technique on, but like this is the sound that I want in this loop that I've made for 6 hours now. Set up a mic and do it. It's very like the mic setup is the friction point right now. That's where I'm working on. That's like the fine tuning that I'm getting. Like, it's overall it's functioning, but being in the flow of like, hey, this has been going, I'm in a 6-hour session right now, or that's a little elaborate, but 2, 3 more reasonable. Like I don't want to spend 10 minutes coming out of that session to set up a microphone for this random idea that I might think works, and then you spend,
you'll lose it because you're too busy setting up stuff.
Yeah, you'll set it up, and then it turns into like justifying everything that you just did instead of like following the process or the original idea that you had. So you're spending that much more time trying to justify, well, I just set this up, I have to use this now. And it may not even work like long term in the project, or the idea, it's just a one-off. Like it's like DJing, right? Like you're mixing ideas of sounds and juggling that back and forth. And like same thing in those like creative flows. Like, man, I wonder what this drum would sound like right now. Like, yeah, you could dig a sample up, but I like weird drums, so I have them. So being able, and like that's kind of a creative outlet for me, is like creating that modular loop, flow, space, and then playing my instruments on top of that. Just for me, I have an amazing sounding room. I'm gonna enjoy it now, digging in and like making this kind of atmosphere, and then playing something as simple as like a tempura over top of it, or tabla is a little more complex, but the room sounds good enough now where it's separate and they each hold their own. It's not like an overbearing thing. But yeah, that's really what I'll do. I'll like recently, I generally practice my tabla in lehra, which is like a loop of different rags essentially, but that's like your accompaniment when you perform, or like if it's a tabla solo or anything like that, you'll have a lira backing you, and that keeps like a flow and like timing of everything, because the roles are reversed. It's like you're giving the lira player the timing, and you're taking more of like the melodic kind of freedom of timing. So you're depending, as a drummer, you're depending on somebody for that flow while you're still, and this is like, I'm just now realizing this in like the last few lessons that I've had. But depending on the lira player as a tabla player, and a drummer on top of it, you have to switch the roles to be able to perform and do the solo and really like breathe and flow with it. Because like as a drummer, for me, I'm very like metronome, like you move and you flow with it, but there's no like movement in it. I mean, there's a pocket, but in Indian music, the communication between the lira and the tabla or whoever the other person is very like flowy, and it can be very sped up and slowed down. It's very lyrical. So yeah, getting all that has been very interesting to like experiment with.
It sounds like it. It sounds great. Sounds like a wonderful space for you to create in, and that's only going to help you more in the future, I feel like, anyway.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I was a classically trained musician, if you will, for 20 years, almost. Maybe 18. So that's all Western music. So like having all that like ingrained into you, but still have like an Indian influence of like, hey, it's not usual, but we're in 37 right now. Like we're not in 4. Like we need to curb. And so that's been that's one of the main reasons why I was drawn to Indian music, because it is so off. And like there's more producers nowadays, but all electronic music's all 4/4. That's usually because like historically it's very hard to get off the grid with DAWs or before that. I keep hitting that, bro. Too much hands. Or like the modular is very hard to get out of 4/4. But being able to like understand like 37 is, some 24 is 2 cycles of 12, right? Like, so like being able just to subdivide that. Like that's how Indian music works, and like you just keep subdividing down into infinity.
And so you're always so deep and so technical with everything, like, and how you explain it. I just catch myself just sitting over here chilling, just listening to it.
Yeah, I mean, I try to be very technical about most things. Just in like learning, I'm always learning. It's kind of been getting me in the ass lately, but the biggest thing is like learning to apply it, right? Like you can sit there and learn, but I want to like focus the time that I have to like benefit something else that I'm doing. Might be weird.
No, it ain't weird.
But I'm going to sit and watch YouTube for hours at night, but I'm going to like veg out maybe for an hour, but I'm going to dig into like, hey, I'm trying to accomplish this in my project, musically, in the truck, however, like I'm a very like, this past week is like, I use an AeroPress for my coffee, and that is like I'm trying to like find efficiencies in the morning, and that is like one thing that is like I've got a grinder, I've been hand grinding, but I'm like I need, or I might want a coffee maker, but like a good
Yeah.
cup of coffee. And so like I'll spend like an hour like researching like the coffee maker and still haven't picked a coffee maker, but just like what avenue and like all that. So that's I'm a very technical kind of person in general, so that's kind of how I explain things, I guess.
So you're like a coffee every morning type person?
Only on work days.
Work days?
Yeah.
Big old cup?
1 cup in the morning of just like a regular black, if it's a good cup of coffee. No, if it's like just something, I'll probably throw some cream in it or something. But I've been exploring like real coffee, as like the coffee snobs say, if you will. But like the flavors, and like historically I drink black because it was the man thing, but like now drinking black and like reading the notes and like, oh man, I can taste this right now. And it's all like hand ground, hand pressed, like no machine. Like it's a real good, like it is a good ritual to have in the morning, 'cause you have to like work for it, and like it's all done by you. You're not just pressing a button. But it is time consuming when you like wake up and like have to go.
Yeah. I'm definitely wake up and get out the door within 15 minutes for a work day.
Yeah.
I'm a big energy drinker. I like C4s.
Oh yeah, I can't. Like I'll drink sweet tea, but that's about as much caffeine. Like I can't do like energy drinks like that. I have like headache issues too. So like caffeine's a real big factor, on that. And so like too much caffeine, no good. Too little caffeine, no good.
Oh, you got to find that perfect balance.
Yeah, exactly. But luckily I've found that caffeine can help that. But yeah, I try to limit that. So like I can drink 1 cup a day at work and it's 4 o'clock.
Yeah.
The work day is almost over. Great. But still being like efficient and like getting stuff done.
You still building bikes out there?
So I actually just transitioned into a new role. This is the end of my first week. So I'm now in technical and warranty guide for Trek. So handling like technical and warranty claims, and communicating with shops and customers on like this is the proper way to do things. This is why we do things.
Oh, okay.
I can like give you things under goodwill. I can credit things. Just that overall communication. But it's been interesting, like moving, because I'm full remote now. To where wake up, make the coffee in your house.
And then you work at your house too? Oh,
yeah.
No, now it makes sense why you turned your bedroom into a big ass studio too.
Well, that's been a thing. So it's kind of all like worked its way into each other. It's like, well, I have a bedroom that is a studio. I can work remote, yes. I mean, I definitely done some adjustments around it recently for it, but yeah. So I'm still with Trek. Awesome company to work for. Awesome bikes to ride. That's without even working for them. I've always been on a Trek, but yeah. So I'm basically the guy that like I used to call.
I get you.
Like, hey, I don't know what's going on right now. It's like, oh, well, here's the like 5 billion documents that I can pull up. So like that's what I'm learning now, is like all the resources and where to find them and how to be that guy.
Well, that's always good though when you get a promotion.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure it pays better too.
Yeah, I mean,
Seems like a little bit more responsibility, but
yeah, it is a promotion, but it's not necessarily something that you're doing for the money. But it is a good team to be on in Trek. It's a very well networked team. So like we work with everybody, shops in the company, engineers, product managers. Like we're in a Teams chat with pretty much any of those guys at any time. So come to find out.
sounds like a good communication line that y'all have in the company.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very surprised of like how open everything is. Like you can call. I mean, it's all based through Teams, but for working there, like I can call my manager's boss and like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing, and like get an answer. That's not necessarily the way to do it, but or be referred to the proper person that can then answer a Teams video chat like live in front of me real time. So that's like how the remote world has been this past week, is like just a lot of headphones, quiet rooms externally, but just like chatting and like learning all like memory and all that stuff.
All the different elements. And
Yeah, it's been interesting. So
well, Rillo, Will, I ain't gonna hold you up too much longer.
I'll chat.
Yeah. We've been rolling for 55 minutes,
Nice.
so we close it up. Do you have any words of wisdom for the listeners out there?
Honestly, I was just thinking about something on the way over here. It was, we're always trying to like go to something external, to fulfill that like short 15-minute, that short 30 seconds. Like on the walk over here, I was like, man, let me pull up Instagram or let me figure something out to do. And then here we have a blessing, but I've been trying to focus more on, honing in anywhere you are, honing in on what's going on around you. I'll walk downtown Houston. Sounds are nowhere near what's going on here, but it's the soundtrack that you're in. And being able to focus in that and like listening around to those things, that's like kind of where I've been sitting, instead of like going to Instagram or, filling out this thing that this click needs or, whatever. So it doesn't matter if you're out here or if you're in a city or if you're driving, turn off the music, a couple seconds, listening to the wheels is actually pretty fun for me. But, that gives you the time to zone in and kind of explore, meditate, if you will, but explore that little second. And so that's what I've been working on recently, even just walking over here. Instead of just popping it open, you'll actually get a lot of time left at the end of the day for that. So
Nice. That's great words of wisdom, bro.
yeah.
But thank you again for joining and taking time out Krampus to come sit back here on the show.
Always
And,
fun.
Got you on video now.
That's a new one.
So
This is my first video podcast, I think. I've done several audio, but
yeah, I think we've done 3. This would be the 3rd one together now, I think, or maybe 4.
3 or 4. I know. I don't know, but yeah.
Yeah, something like that. But anyways, thank you again for being a part of the show. And y'all make sure to check out Third Coast Podcast on 5000ws.thirdcoastpodcast.com on all major streaming platforms, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. And make sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And we got some Krampus activities to do. Got some gumbo to eat. Seen that toy table is filling up too. It's been a great afternoon so far, and thank you, Will, again,
No
so
problem.
much. And I'm Joe. What it do, Gators? We out.